and this panel will be concentrated on 5G, the new generation of mobile communication. We know that this technology is an enabler for a lot of innovation, like autonomous car, industry 4.0, virtual reality, but the larger is the surface of devices and of connection, the higher are the risks. So we would like to understand better in this panel how to enable a better security of the 5th generation of communication. I would like to thank you, the organizer of this panel, Nicola Blefari-Melazzi, who is professor at the Roma Tor Vergata University and director of the National Inter-University Consortium for Telecommunication. And welcome to all of our panelists, Eva Spina, that is General Director at the Institute for Communication and Information Technology of the Minister of Economic Development, Sabrina Baggioni, 5G Program Director of Vodafone Italia, Roberto Pignani, Accenture Security Communication Media and Technology Portfolio Head in Italy, Giuseppe Bianchi, Professor at Roma Tor Vergata University and expert of 5G for the consortium, National Inter-University Consortium of Telecommunication, Antonio Caporale, Head of Business Unit Cybersecurity, SELTA, and last but not least, Rene Summer, Director for Government and Industry Relations at Ericsson Group. Welcome to all of our panelists. I kindly ask you, all of you, to keep your first speech in 5-6 minutes at least, in order to have the opportunity to have a discussion later and get some questions from the audience. So I would like to leave the microphone to Sabrina Baggioni and ask her to give us an overview over the opportunity of the 5G technologies. Thank you and welcome to Sabrina Baggioni.
Thank you, Luca, and thanks to the organization and Professor Blefari to host me to this event, and good afternoon to everyone. I will. What I want to do at the beginning of this panel is to share some insight on the new generation of technology, so 5G, without going into the technical details, because I know this is not a technical panel per se, but I need to give you a couple of insights in order to understand how transformational, how really a step ahead versus the current technology 5G is, and then I'll talk about what it enables in terms of applications, so that we can start the discussion on the type of impact, socioeconomic impact that 5G will have. So 5G is typically associated with a much higher speed of data transferring, which is something that we can already foresee and witness on our smartphone. So it definitely goes much faster in transferring data versus 4G or 4.5G. It's actually targeting for achieving and overachieving 10 gigabit per second at the maximum speed, not currently available yet, but it's currently running at 800 megabit per second, 1 gigabit per second on average, which is 4 or 5 times the best 4G speed that you can have. So that is what everyone is thinking when 5G is mentioned, the speed of transferring, no lag, no waiting time to download or for streaming. But that's only the first one. There are the two major technical characteristics of 5G that makes it a really transformational technology. The first is around capacity. The 5G network, by the way it's built, so by the architecture and the way it allows a radio to capture signal, will allow us to really provide a service to millions of devices per square kilometer. And that is not something that we are imagining. It's a trend that we just cannot stop. If you think of how many devices, connected devices you have either on yourself at the moment or are present in your home or offices, and you think of how many many we walk through when we just scroll around cities. You can imagine how many devices already connected we have developed and are developing, and how many we ask in our daily life. So it's a trend that we cannot stop. There are studies that are talking about more than 25 billion devices in 2025 against 8 billion people on Earth. So it's an order of magnitude higher in terms of connectivity requirement on network, and 5G is the only technology that will enable us to provide service to so many devices. The third and very relevant element of 5G is latency. It's called ultra low latency, and it's the characteristics of 5G that enables real time. For the first time, real time. Milliseconds between one input, which can be a video captured by a camera, to the alarm or to the other video that is capturing that signal, between input and output. Milliseconds, 5, 6, 7 milliseconds is the performance that we are already observing on the technology today. And that is a crucial element of 5G because it's opening up applications and business critical solutions that otherwise are impossible to deliver. Think, for example, to the whole area of robotics, where robots need to work in a safely manner with human operators. And in the majority of cases, these robots must be isolated because they can be dangerous. Why it can be dangerous? Because they are programmed to perform tasks, and the human being is not programmable in the same way. So if the robot is potentially dangerous with laser, for example, it can be really harmful. When you introduce latency at milliseconds and the capacity to manage intelligence, artificial intelligence in a flexible way, you can imagine robots in a factory, in a production line, or in an assembly line to work with human operators in a much more flexible way, introducing productivity, modularity, and a new way of achieving efficiency by companies. Think of surgery. Remote surgery, where a surgeon can operate from a remote studio, robots on an operating table with a milliseconds latency, as if he or she was in the operating theater. And that opens up the access to precious resources such as doctors and surgeons around the world without all the difficulties that we currently experience. Think of mobility, where you don't need to get to the autonomous driving, but even a safer driving, where the braking systems is informed by other vehicles, connected vehicles that are approaching a blind cross, for example, and your car is instantly informed by this other car approaching the cross and gives you an alarm or brake if you don't stop, avoiding an impact. So all this type of applications would be impossible with the latency at millisecond level, and with the capacity, ability of the network to transfer information and the video at that level of speed. All industries, all sectors, public and private, will be impacted by 5G, delivering new experiences, better experiences, enhanced experience with virtual reality, with augmented reality, mixed reality. I can go deeper into what they are in the next phases of the panel, but this is to say that it's transformational across the board. There's no industry or sector that will not be impacted by 5G.
Thank you very much, Sabrina Baggioni, for introducing us this brave new word, I would like to say, this very audacious new word that is opening up to us. And I would like to ask you, to Professor Bianchi, to give us some insights into the specific features of the 5G security.
Yes, I need to share the slides.
Yes,
so if you can give me...
I will enable. You will be enabled by...
Perfect.
Okay, now
so
you're
you
ready.
Probably see them.
Yeah. Yes, we can see it. Great. I'll leave you the microphone.
No, because after this wonderful presentation from Sabrina, there is also another point. That is, usually we talk about 5G security as a problem, but I would like to remark that security has been improved in 5G. So from a technical point of view, we have developed a better network. So I'm not going to enter into the details of what are the specific improvements, but I try to picture just over the slides. So that's why I wanted to have the slides. So you can see that there are several points in the network in which we added extra levels of security. For instance, there was not integrity at layer 2, and there was added. Authentication control has been transferred to the home so that we can intercept some attacks. We do a better credential management. We have better interconnection and protection of interconnection traffic, and so on and so forth. So why a lot of talk about 5G security? Well, because someone has to implement it, and that's the real problem. And actually, I would like to start with a real-world story that everybody of you knows. The point is that having a very good security solution is not enough. This story, for instance, comes in October last year, and we had a system in which we had a very good level of security, and they forgot in the implementation the initialization vector for the encryption that was set to only zeros. And now this didn't happen in Wi-Fi, WEP98, or in the second generation, in which we had a disaster. But this happened actually very recently in Microsoft Zero Logon attack. I think you heard about that. And that was actually something in which, for an implementation mistake, security was at stake. And actually, implementation mistakes can be a little bit more technical than just a forgotten initialization vector that probably everyone that has done a minimum level of classes in security knows. For instance, in a Facebook site, some researchers found out that in 2018 there was open a so-called Blake and Baker oracle, which is a scary technique. So I expect that most of you do not know those levels of details, but finding down, and especially finding out using a specific type of fuzzing, finding down those kind of threats into a network of Facebook, into sites of Facebook or even of Cisco, in 2018, when TLS was definitely hardened for that time, it's pretty scary. And just to tell you something more, of course, I'm not telling anything against anyone here, but for instance, some bugs sometimes look even suspicious, like that they are backdoors or something like that. I think that, this should be known a little bit more. It's something that comes out from 2013 from a very well-known messaging application. I'm skipping the details because I do not have time. But this new messaging application for the time actually came out offering a better security. So they came out with an end-to-end, so I'm skipping the technical details, but just to tell you, there was a better approach in which they used a so-called Diffie-Hellman key agreement plus some extra authentication code to validate the handshake. I'm not entering into the details. But the point is that, so if you are a little bit learned, you can read the details here. But the point is that in the implementation, they added an XOR with something actually produced by the server. And now I spoiled the thing here. Basically, the point is that by adding this extra level of security from the point of view of the implementation, actually this could break the security because the server of this company could actually perform, in theory, a man-in-the-middle attack. Now, when this was pointed out, they said it was a bug, and they corrected it. I don't know. I don't want to fight against anyone, so I don't want to tell whether this was a bug or not. But this looks to be a backdoor, to me at least. It's an error that is very subtle, but it was made, and it permitted to the manufacturer to actually enter into the system and intercept. Okay, this is a real-world story. It's in Russian, unfortunately. But if you take a picture to the slide, you can actually have a look at the details. So the problem is that in 5G, we have a real problem because 5G is very huge as a field. we have to do careful implementation. We have new side channel attacks that are popping out. And then we have a multiplicity of vendors. I believe that later on someone will talk about that. And so basically implementation looks to be actually a problem. Now, from my point of view, I want to leave you with two messages. The first one is a relatively good news. I mean, typically we talk about 5G as a yes or no system. That is, either we have security or we do not have security. I would like to take a different perspective here and show you with this slide that 5G is actually a very articulated system in which, if you see in this bottom part of the slide, I placed in red, then yellow, then green, the different level of trust that we need to have. If you go down to the edge of the network, then definitely placing an antenna on top of a house, we don't have possibility to have guarantees of security at that level. So basically, in this part of the network, we may relax requirements from the point of view of security, because even an attacker that takes control of a distributed unit cannot do much. The same is for the serving network. Of course, the serving network is inside the network, but it's still our roaming operator, and so we do not have control. Rather, what I would do is that I would encourage to have maximum level of security and attention and certification down in the core of the network, where actually our data reside and where we want to keep control of the situation. So my encouragement is, don't say yes or no, this vendor yes, this vendor no, but look at specifically what part of the network we are covering. It's a little bit more complex than what I wrote in the slide, but the idea is that 5G is a complex network with several levels of trust domains, so different level of trust. And final message is the bad news. Unfortunately, we have a skill gap in terms of human resources. I believe that you have heard about the Tommaso De Zan report about the shortage of human resources in cybersecurity in general. Well, in 5G security is a lot worse because we need to find out a guy that has both 5G competencies, so telecom, classical telecom stuff, plus cybersecurity. And this is pretty hard. I stop for now. If there are questions later on, of course, I'm going to follow up. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bianchi, for the very interesting and the very quick insight inside the specific feature of 5G security. And I would like to invite to the microphone Mr. Caporale to give us a perspective over the experience of the point of view of a company that has a long track record in the critical infrastructure security. Welcome, Mr. Caporale. I think here you are.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
SELTA. Okay, I introduce SELTA. SELTA is an Italian company that has been engaged in the research and development of technological solutions for critical infrastructure for almost 50 years, with production plants throughout the country. We think that the 5G network development is really an important opportunity, both for company operating in telecommunication sector and for the country development. We strongly believe in it, and we are investing in this direction. To get the most value from 5G development, a strong synergy between Italian and European industry and the academic world is required. The role of national telco operator will be fundamental, as they will have to manage significant investment and allow companies to develop new skill and competence capable of interoperating with technological solutions also developed outside Europe. This project will allow Italy to emerge again with a significant role in the ICT field, in Europe and around the world. One of the levers supporting the developments described above is certainly staff training. With this in mind, SELTA, in collaboration with the National Inter-University Consortium CNIT, specifically with the University of Tor Vergata, and together with the American Foundation, ONF, has set up a laboratory for the development of 5G VoLT solution at the Tortoreto headquarters in Italy. To guide Italian manufacturing company in the development of new 5G product, it will be essential for telco operator to share the technical project in advance in order to create specific device that can be integrated into the project and service. SELTA's goal is to recover a technological gap and prepare itself for what will be the new solution, such as 6G, which will need innovative teams involving professionals different from today's one. Hence, multidisciplinary teams that will see engineering from various specializations, from IT and electronics to material engineering and others. For several years now, SELTA has been developing solutions and continues to invest in ultra-broadband for mobile backhauling, multi-service access, FTTX scenarios based on enhanced vectoring, and GFAST. One of the fundamental aspects will be the security management and the approach of this solution in the cyberspace. For sure, we will need to make product of adequate resilience and security based on their use, as indeed we have done up to now in all the sector in which we operate, as it is already being done with the MISE and other institutions. It will be necessary to have a security schema able to match dynamic and not static environment, as we are used to manage. I believe that skill should be of eclectic type, able to think in an unconventional way or to go outside the box in order to face attack of all kinds. Certainly, a fundamental role will be to have equipment and systems that integrate artificial intelligence to support human decision. 5G network will offer its transmission capacity, low delay, and will be able to offer adequate service even in the presence of high density of smartphone and Internet of Things devices. Thanks to this characteristic, 5G network will be used for extremely critical applications on which society behaviors will depend and which will be the vehicle for transferring an amount of information and personal data that is unimaginable today. It is therefore essential to guarantee the full and continuous operation of 5G networks and protect them from attacks that may lead to critical disruption or the disclosure of personal or confidential data. SELTA will participate in the 5G cybersecurity education program. Cybersecurity and 5G are fundamental elements of our future in smart city, self-driving car, operating instrument product line. And SELTA want to be among the protagonists by giving a great contribution. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Caporale, for this overview over the operations of SELTA. And now I would like to invite Mr. Summer to give us some insights over the protection of the deployed networks and the end user. So welcome, Mr. Summer, and you can share your slides.
Thank you. Can you see my slides?
Yes, I can. So the microphone is yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the opportunity for Ericsson to speak at this important event. And also, I'm very much impressed of Sabrina's presentation about what 5G can bring for the society. And of course, having Ericsson, a European company, at the center of this revolution is extremely encouraging and something which I think we all are very much proud of, that we are part of this very important technological development. Today, of course, I will speak more about the security, and what I would like to start and bring is really to follow up maybe also what the professor was speaking about, that from an Ericsson point of view, we have very much from the outset of this discussion been talk about what is really important in this discussion. And what I would like to highlight is really that as any G, what is important here is to focus on the security of the deployed networks. Why? Because this is to put the end user in the center of the discussion. Because as it is the same way with how you experience network coverage or data speeds, the same way will your security experience as an end user be defined by the deployed network. So the point being here, then, if we are going to protect end users and if we're going to thereby focus our discussion about the security status of the deployed networks, we really need to think about 4 different levels. And this is where I think my story ties very much with the previous technical descriptions from the professor, that we, as a supplier here, of course, see 4 key pillars or layers that define the posture of the security of the network and of the end users. And it comes really from the basic when we talk about the telecommunication standards, and very much, as was mentioned, 5G is the most secure G ever defined and specified. So this is, of course, a very important credential to bring into the discussion. But from an end user perspective, just having security in standards is not enough. And the second layer then that comes into discussion is, of course, looking at the vendor products, which is the green part here, which is about the products which the different vendors develop, and even more importantly, what are the development processes that they have in place to support having secure products in place. And here, of course, there are a number of different things that each and every vendor has to think about. And from Ericsson point of view, a number of different processes, and we have our security and reliability model that is the foundation for how we develop secure products. On top of that, of course, you need also additional capacities, such as, for example, having an effective piece that deals with vulnerabilities as they emerge in your own products or in products or software which you bring into your product. So as any vendor in the industry, you depend also on third-party commercial software, open source, and third-party hardware that you need to integrate into your product. And of course, the totality of that is very essential to have products. And these are, of course, then built on the standards at the bottom. Then, of course, moving on, no network is without legacy or with other vendor products in there. So how we deploy, or what was mentioned before, the implementation is absolutely essential. So how you then bring together the different products and making sure that the sum of the parts becomes stronger than rather weaker, as was alluded to earlier, then it's essential to think about how you bring these different products into our network, and with the legacy and with other suppliers in mind. So this is another element which is absolutely essential. But then once the networks are being deployed, then are of course operated on a daily basis. And here again, of course, having operational procedures and security in place is absolutely essential to make sure that you have processes in place that make sure that you run the network from a security point of view in a secure way on a daily basis, 365 days a year. And here, of course, what is important to understand that if we look at the bottom part, the yellow part, this is very much a stakeholder process of a multi-parties which are part of the definition and standardization of relevant security standards, which I will come back shortly. Then, of course, you have the vendors who are responsible for their own products and for their product development, which is another very important element. But then, of course, when it comes to deploying network, you need to consider as an operator which products are you bringing in, how do you integrate, and what kind of procedures do you have in place. And this is very much in the control of the operator. And then lastly, but not least, the operational process is, of course, very much in the control of the operators, or in situations where parts of the operation is outsourced to a managed service provider, then it can be a company like Ericsson that is providing the services, then of course need to follow the instructions of the operators in this context. So one of the key messages what I would like to bring here is really to think about security from a deployed network perspective. This is the most relevant consideration because this is what defines the security experience, and that there are no single silver bullet solutions here, and a holistic approach that takes into considerations all these 4 levels that mutually strengthens and supports an enhanced security in a system is absolutely essential. What we should definitely avoid is a believer of silver bullet solutions that create a false sense of security, where you move problem from one part of this dependency to somewhere else without solving anything, but creating a false sense of security. Now, to just finish off one of these elements, then looking into the yellow part of my slide here on the next slide, there's a lot of discussion also about 5G security standardization, and there's discussion, let's fix 5G security from a standards point of view. Well, the bad news here is that there is no single 5G security standard. And this is, I think, very important to understand. And if you look at this from a deployed network perspective, you see on your left-hand side here at the bottom a number of very important organizations that defined in different ways security standards and also interoperability of the security features between different parts of the network. And again, there is no single silver bullet here. There is no one 5G standard or one place where you can solve these things. And engagement across these different forms is absolutely essential. And to finish off, one should really think about these standards as the recipes to bake bread. That's what they are. But everything else, if we look at this from the perspective, if you do a product, well, it is up to the company then select which grain they will use, where it has been grown, how was that grain transported to the bakery, how did you prepare the process when you were baking the bread, what is the condition in your factory, what hygiene do you have in a product. But of course, once you are done, of course, when you ship the product to a local supermarket, how is it dealt with in the local market? What's the hygiene there, etc., etc. So I hope that this very short presentation gives you at least a good overview of the challenge and task and what is important to keep focus on to make sure that every of those users that Sabrina talked about are also receiving the necessary level of security to make sure that 5G delivers on expectations and on security as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rene Summer, for this amazing presentation. And now is the turn of Mr. Pignani that will give us an overview over the role of security in the modeling of the future business models. So thank you, Mr. Pignani. The microphone is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Luca, and thanks for hosting Accenture and me in this event. It's a pleasure being here. Good evening to everyone. Linking with Rene and Sabrina, all we very well know how much innovation is today more than ever essential for all the organizations, especially for comms and media operator, to ensure sustainability and growth, and how much the adoption of emerging technologies such as 5G is bringing a significant paradigm shift in terms of information security. According to our recent study on 5G globally, 79% of respondents believe that 5G have a significant, if not revolutionary, impact in their organization. And with its potential transformation, 5G is an enabling agent for many of other innovative technology, such as Internet of Things, machine learning, artificial intelligence, or augmented virtual reality, but also new business model and new business opportunity. On the other hand, the adoption of this new technology brings with it new risks and new attack surface, which must be managed through new paradigms in this scenario, because a traditional approach to security is no more sustainable in this environment. With the transition to 5G technology, companies will be also forced to deal with a considerable increase in terms of volume of data and speed of information, elements not to be overlooked in terms of security. And in this scenario, in which, let me say, numerous devices with different applications are connected to a network infrastructure that allows significant data exchange speed and minimal latency, the risk is that a single vulnerability found in a type of device or a possible misconfiguration or error can expose a huge amount of data in a very, very short time, giving also access to confidential information or allowing the control of a device. Connecting with Sabrina, but also with Rene's speech, and to give some example, if adequate cyber security measures were not implemented through cyber attacks, it could be possible disconnect a medical device that delivers insulin to a patient or a pacemaker or disrupting 5G communication between the access network and production site of the connected factory or manufacturing plants, and compromising the function of robotic surgery, as we said before, evading also defrauding space occupation, detection, and mobility management in smart city and in system in the city. So at the end of the day, this technology is so disruptive and has an impact in numerous scenarios of social and economic life, therefore offering side to new threats and cyber attacks from which we must learn to defend ourselves. And it's crucial security in order to be able to prevent this kind of event. The mentioned 5G study also showed that over half of the respondents express concern that 5G will make them more vulnerable to cyber attacks, and believe that the most of the risk will originate at the end user level. I mean, it means device or people. And by focusing, for example, on the IoT, in which the device connected to the network do not necessarily have a human being behind them, and in which the identity of the user is accompanied with the identity of the device, we understand that we will see an explosion of identity, and that trust, reliability, and security of the connected device becomes a crucial problem, a central problem. On top of that, personal data proliferation with all the related regulation in storing, protecting, and using data is booming right now. And the amount of data is increasing more and more in terms of volume, due also to the focus on customer experience, the proliferation also of portals, apps, connected device, and so on. So at the end of the day, what I want to strongly underline here is in this scenario, behind the corner is the user and the customer will choose operator, also considering their ability to preserve and secure their identity, device, data, and info. And we need to consider for sure security as a part of the customer experience, and more than before, a real key success factor for our company.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Pignani. Thank you. And last but not least, Eva Spina. The idea is that all this tech transformation and this innovation will also have to be addressed by new regulation and the ability of the politics to give a frame to the transformation. So I see that she is sharing already her presentation, so I will kindly ask you to the General Director, Eva Spina, to take her turn and introduce her presentation. Thank you to be here at ITASEC.
Thank you, and it's a very pleasure for me to be here with you in this panel and this initiative. And after all these very interesting speeches of today, I'd like to give you some highlights about the cybersecurity strategy at European level and at the national one. And if we consider the cybersecurity strategy for a digital decade in the EU, we can see that it means to give security for the next generation of broadband mobile networks. And at the national level, we have two pillars. That is the Golden Power Law and the law about the national cybersecurity perimeter. And as regards the European cyber strategy, in the 2019, the March 20 of 2019, the European Commission set up a recommendation on the cybersecurity of 5G networks. And the main achievement of this recommendation are to have a coordinated risk assessment based on the input provided by each member state, and a European toolbox of risk mitigating measures for 5G. And as regards the risk assessment, each member state carry out a risk analysis at the national level, and all this work was put inside by European Commission, and a final document has been issued on October 2019. And on the basis of this risk assessment was adopted in January 2020 the 5G toolbox. And this measure was a collection of all the mitigation measures to take the risks assessed in the European Union risk assessment document. And in particular, we have 8 strategic measures and 11 technical measures to all the states. And as a sample, the significant example of strategic measure, we can find the number 3, that is the assessing the risk profile of suppliers and applying restriction for suppliers considered to be high risk, including the necessary exclusion to effectively mitigate risks for key assets. And then the number 5, that is ensuring the diversity of suppliers for individual mobile operators to appropriate multi-vendor strategies. And as another action set up in the European Union, we can find the certification scheme for 5G. And it is a part of the European regulation of 881 of 2019. And it was an idea to have a unique common scheme of certification for 5G. And for this reason, ENISA, that is the European Agency for Cybersecurity, received the mandate to start the process to realize this scheme. And at the national level, as a Ministry of Economic Development, we realized a national working group with all the stakeholders to discuss together all these matters and to give a contribute to the scheme. And as regards the national level, we have, as I said before, 2 pillars. The first one is the Golden Power Law, and in this law, each mobile operator must notify contracts or agreements concluded with subjects outside of the European Union for procuring equipments or services relating to design, construction, maintenance, and so on. And the Italian government can impose the implementation of specific measures, both technical and procedural, when using the equipments and services. The other pillar, the second pillar, is the national cybersecurity perimeter, and the implementation of this special power is based to the outcome of the security assessment carried out by the National Evaluation and Certification Center, CVCN, set up at the Ministry. And this decree expands the scope of the Golden Power Law to the procurement of 5G equipments and services for supply belong to the EU. And as all of you can see, we have a coordinate measures at the European level and also at the national one. And I hope that all together, also with the cooperation of the stakeholder, it's possible to realize a very security for the 5G. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, General Director SPINA. We have 10 minutes, I think no more than 10 minutes, to have a very quick wrap up of all the great insights and overview and contents that our panelists share with us. I would like to start with Sabrina Baggioni. In 2 minutes, just at least, could you give us some insights about the next activities of Vodafone over the 5G deployments in Italy?
Sure. I'll actually in one sentence, if you want. We, as probably everyone knows, we ran a 2 years long trial in Milan and metropolitan area Milan. We're now trialing other projects in Genoa and Catanzaro, so we're expanding the level of innovation. But in the meantime, we're transforming what used to be a trial into services and end-to-end solutions for companies, entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur context in Italy across the sectors, as I said. And we're doing this, allow me to say this extra word, we're doing this by taking privacy and security, given the context of this panel, really seriously. And this is being done even in the trial context. So starting from GDPR, to deciding whether the data had to stay on-prem at the edge on the very premise of the customer, or in our network at the edge on edge computing, and what components could remain in the cloud, to designing management and operations that could prevent transparency in forum and proactively activate operational procedures in case of forecasted incidents, and at the same time maintaining an open and transparent discussion between private and public to really share what are the potential incidents that can happen. And I think that this is crucial going forward. If we don't continue to be an ecosystem that can transparently discuss about potential risks, we won't find the proper balance between compliancy and the level of risk. So this is the way we are seeing going forward on 5G.
Thank you very much, Sabrina Baggioni, also for the quick answer. I would now invite Professor Bianchi. We know that we are already studying also the 6G network. So what are the challenges that the next generation of communication poses to security? In 1 minute, 2 at least, please, the answer. Thank you.
I mean, 1 minute, because otherwise I need to talk a lot. But anyway, there are two, in my opinion, big priorities. One is the scaling of the IoT and the security there, and the other is the integration with artificial intelligence. And with artificial intelligence, the problem is that artificial intelligence can be exploited by attackers. So attackers can create a reaction, automatic reactions, and if they know how to create a reaction from artificial intelligence, that can become a real problem. We saw already in the network some cases in which, for instance, BGP black holes were created by some sort of attacks that leverage such automatic reactions, and that is a serious problem to address. That's it.
Thank you very much.
There will be more, but it's better to stop.
I know, but we will keep the suggestion for the next ITASEC next year. So, Mr. Caporale, in 1 minute, what are the opportunities that the 5G gives to a firm like SELTA? I don't know if Mr. Caporale can.
Oh, I'm here.
Yes, here you are. I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. But for us, it's very important for our employees implement the skill and implement also the share the competence of the people, the hardware and the software. Yes, for the 5G solution, but also integrated with the people that are very good competence for the cyber, because the team is very important. The one team for internal, the people specialized for the hardware, the software, but also the cyber. And I think that is very important, the team multidisciplinary competence.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Summer, what should be done in standardization in order to keep the network safe?
Well, I think that what is important, of course, that we have a process like we have under 3GPP and ETSI, which is a transparent and open process where, of course, we have a multi-stakeholder participation where we can bring all the good ideas to the table. So I think this is something which we need to continue to celebrate, make sure that standardization for security continues in this context that 3GPP and ETSI provides, and its regional counterpart. So participation and transparency, I would say, are number one. When it comes to the technical messages here, I think it's very important to also continue to remind us that standardization is only one element of the layer that defines the security posture of a deployed network. And we need to continuously think about all these 4 layers that I mentioned, where of course then people, processes becomes a very critical aspect. So this is, I would say, the most essential 2 considerations going forward.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pignani, do you think that security will be an asset on which consumers will choose the companies to rely to?
Yes, I think so. Yes, I think so. Consider that in 5G environment, and I want to strongly highlight again this concept, and how much security will be the key business enable and also the way to rebuild a solid trust and intimacy in customer relationship. On the other hand, the approach deploy technology first and ask security question later is no more sustainable. It is essential that all the organization applies strategy capable of guaranteeing what we define implicit security. That is implicit security that resides in the bare DNA of technological solution from their design, starting from their design. We also know that cybersecurity is no longer a purely technological issue, but a protecting of the economy, security, and public health. And cybercrime is increasing aggressively and technologically more and more advanced. So, therefore, a strong collaboration within companies between public and private organizations is needed. I think it will be also the opportunity to rebuild the relation with the customer, especially for comms and media operators.
Thank you very much. And again, last but not least, Director Spina, what are the rules, what are the next steps that the Italian government is taking in order to keep the 5G network safe?
Thanks. I think that and it's important in this direction have a good legal framework to give security to 5G networks. And in this sense, it's very important the implementation of CVCN, our center in Ministry of Economic Development, which is involved in both pillars I said before, that is in Golden Power Law and also in the Perimeter Law, because this center will give more security with a series of tests, technical tests, set up on a series of specific equipment for 5G in particular. So a legal framework is a correct step in the right direction, and our role can be to give implementation of, in this framework.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all our panelists, Sabrina Baggioni, Roberto Pignani, Giuseppe Bianchi, Antonio Caporale, Rene Summer, and Eva Spina. And thank you again to the organizer, Nicola Blefari-Melazzi. I would like to thank you all the audience. Please stay with us because after a little break there is